with AI, there's a lot of focus today on AI ethics, governance, and things, and a lot of the times when we talk about that, people are looking at legal things and some regulations and how to comply with that, security. But I think we should not limit ourselves to that. I don't treat AI ethics as a separate AI conversation. So I treat it as a design and ownership problem, right? And I think responsible AI comes from clarity on who owns decisions, where humans stay in the loop, right? And how we detect unintended outcomes early. And in my view, these are architecture and leadership questions. So when responsibility is designed into the system, ethics can become operational, not theoretical. They need to really focus on the design and ownership of the system as they start evolving AI and integrating with AI in their enterprise solutions.
Hello world! Welcome to another episode of Her Coded Story, where we explore the varied, complex and colorful journeys of women across technology. I'm your host, Moturayo, and I'm also the community manager for Product-Led Alliance and AI Accelerator Institute. If you don't know about us yet, then where have you been? But don't worry, I'll tell you about us. Product-Led Alliance supports product leaders, growth experts, and go-to-market professionals through learning and community. And the AI Accelerator Institute does the same for AI practitioners, researchers, and technical leaders. Both communities exist to make learning accessible with an immersive platform that includes articles, podcasts, reports, and videos, you name it. And this podcast, obviously being one of them, this podcast is for women in tech who want to hear real stories they can recognize themselves in. So, which brings us to our amazing guest. We have an amazing guest with us today. Today, we are joined by Dipti, who is the VP for AI and Data Engineering at New Broad LLC. Dipti, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in your own words. Tell us who you are and what we should know about you beyond your LinkedIn headline.
Absolutely. Hi, Muten Rayo. Thanks for having me on today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Everyone, I'm Dipti. I'm an engineering leader, advisor, builder, focused on designing intelligent systems that scale with trust. And I've spent over 15 years building, leading large-scale SaaS, identity security, intelligent systems and data platforms at companies like Equinix, GE, Apollo, and where the real challenge was taking complex systems out of experimentation into production environments that people could really rely on. And right now, my work shows up in two main ways through New Broad. I'm focused on data science and AI advisory work, partnering with teams who want to apply AI to practical, responsible ways. And not just as proof of concepts, but as systems that can operate, govern, and evolve over time. And in parallel, I would also want to say that I'm building a stealth digital trust platform, intentionally name free for now, but that's where I'm exploring how trust, ownership, accountability should work as software systems become more autonomous. Right? So the common thread across everything that I do is the same, helping teams move from AI experiments to AI systems that they can rely on.
Amazing. I love it. Moving from experiments to AI systems they can rely on. That sounds fabulous. Just a quick note to our audience. Bear with me, I have a terrible cold. I have the flu right now, so I sound awful and my nose is all clogged up and you probably hear me sneezing, but please, apologies, forgive me and my flu. Okay, so, Dipti, we spoke before recording for our audience. Dipti and I spoke, and Dipti's journey is one that's fascinating and very interesting. I would just love for you to tell us, Dipti, what did your journey into tech look like? What did it really look like? How did it start? Paint us a picture how it started.
Yeah, um, I'll take you back a little bit to my origins. I grew up in Jhansi, a small town in the heartland of India. And this town was shaped by the legacy of a Rani Lakshmi Bai, who was the queen there in mid 1800s. Her story was really full of courage and responsibility and ownership and self-respect. And growing up in that small town, her values were all around us, right? You grew up with the idea as a little girl that when the going gets tough, the tough get going, right? So with that note, when I decided to study engineering, weren't any role models, right? Yes, Rani Jhansi was there, but not role models for women in engineering. Even the idea, Mutun Rai, of engineering itself was very narrow. People asked why I was taking engineering entrance exams, because the mental models were such that it was associated with heavy industrial fields like civil, mechanical, physical industrial fields, right? So there were certain assumptions that engineering required physical strength and that girls were better suited for other admin jobs, teaching, medicine, and such. And I did not experience that as hostility, but it was more of a reflection of the mental model, like I just said, right? So, but what drew me into engineering was curiosity and my love for science and math specifically. My father was a math professor, and once I got selected in these exams, I did receive a lot of support from family, my community. And fast forward, I moved from Jhansi to Silicon Valley, and that was a major defining shift, right? And whoever who of tech is in Silicon Valley, right? So it wasn't a geographic move for me. It was cultural, professional, and personal. And as I grew into education, jobs, at that stage, I think I was not thinking about leadership titles and stuff like that, but more about learning and, getting the right education was an important thing for me. A reliable path forward in life, right? And there was no long term vision, but just a focus on doing the next hard thing well. And from there, my career, I think, grew into leading teams, building platforms, working with AI today. And like I've stepped into leadership roles. I found myself drawing from my origins with systems thinking, responsibility for outcomes, right? And some kind of awareness that technology does not operate in isolation from our lives.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, I love that. That's kind of like what drew me to technology as well. It was how I loved how tech how tech influences how we live our lives, how it's interwoven into our day to day, and it can either make it beautiful or make it worse.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what drew me to tech as well. I think what I'm interested to know was when you made the move to Silicon Valley, were there moments where you questioned whether you belonged there? Were there moments where you questioned whether you were in the right space?
Yeah, I think that imposter syndrome does come from time to time at different moments in your life. Like I said, personally for me, I was focused on learning, and education was a reliable path forward for me, right? So I think that really kept me grounded on some of the basic principles and value, which is having a growth mindset, learning, really not a growth mindset just for education, but also learning about the environment, the culture that I am in, sort of growing with that culture. And I think that grounding really helped me not to question my every step. Now, was I really looking at leadership roles and like I had a huge plan? No, it came through just doing the next hardest thing well. And I would say that early on, I didn't have those thoughts too much, but definitely I think there were some interesting moments in my career that shaped my journey as I grew into leadership.
When did you, because you said, leadership wasn't something that you planned, it sort of just happened. When did you first realize that you were leading? Even whether it was, or was there a moment when you realized you were leading, even though it wasn't in your title?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think so. Leadership, right, was not really on my radar, right? I didn't enter tech thinking that I would lead people, right? I was thinking about technology, about the problems to solve,
Yes.
and things like about large systems, how they work, how they scale, how they help, businesses, consumers, people. So I early in my career when I started, what started to stand out to me that the hardest challenges weren't about writing code in software, right? Like, but they were about systems, how things behaved at scale, and how small decisions cascaded, how reliability broke when I would say coordination wasn't clear between people who work together, right? So I remember one early role where a system would regularly fail under load, right? And on the surface, it looked like a technical issue. But when we dug deeper, the root cause wasn't lack of skill, it was fragmented ownership in a monolithic system, right? And multiple teams touched the system and nobody owned it end to end, right? And that was one of my first real systems lessons that like smart people don't automatically create resilient system. We have to focus on the design. And I think that really changed how I thought and about impact, right? And I started paying more attention to how what I was building, how decisions were made around it, who had the context, and who had the authority, right? As you can see, like these are all questions really leading towards leadership and introspection on that, right? So what happened if something broke at 2 a.m., which it used to? And those questions pulled me naturally into broader responsibility. Not because I wanted, power, but because I wanted things to work.
That's amazing. That's that I think that's an incredible entry into leadership. It's not because of the power or visibility, it's because you just wanted things to work. You just wanted
Yeah.
to be things that worked for everybody. And
Yes.
that's amazing. And I think that's the best way, to be honest. Um I think that brings me to how do you then, because your intention wasn't, power, visibility. It was, let's build systems that work. How did you, or how do you navigate power and visibility, or responsibility? How do you navigate that?
I'd say that whatever shaped me today came for a lot of defining moments in my career, and the way to navigate it is by anchoring on some principles, right? So, first is setting a clear vision because people need to understand where we are going and why. Second is providing strategic clarity like priorities, trade offs, architectural principles, and ownership have to be explicit. And third is building a culture of ownership and psychological safety where people feel accountable for outcomes, right? And safe enough to surface issues early. So these principles, for me, they are not like flashy slogans. Hey, we should lead with clarity and vision and ownership. But I think they are how teams operate day to day. And I would say that to navigate through these, right, one of the hardest one is strategic clarity because that requires alignment beyond your own team. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that makes me curious then. What's been the hardest thing about leadership that people don't talk about? What's the hardest thing you've discovered that no one's ever spoken about?
How, especially for if you're talking like about personally for women, right? How do we navigate in male dominated spaces? Because I think engineering, AI, data, all of these fields are still very male dominated, and most of the challenges that I've felt or faced weren't very loud or explicit, as a result of me being a woman in in technology. But I think they were about sometimes being underestimated, right, and being tested repeatedly for credibility. I think watching ideas land sometimes only when somebody else in the room has restated them, right? And sometimes it could be a little bit annoying, right? Like, hey, I just said that kind of reaction. Um, but small things, they add up over time, right? And so I realized early on that reacting emotionally to every such moment takes away the energy that I needed somewhere else, right? And also figured out ways to cope up with this through developing mechanisms of like getting prepared prior to entering a meeting or a discussion, or being prepared to follow up through different communication mechanisms like email or instant messaging, or whatever is needed, or a one-on-one conversation as needed to sort of overcome some of the challenges that I just mentioned, being a softer voice in the room. So I think this is something that is not that much talked about.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you had to sort of design your own, I guess, leadership, or your own. You had to design. It has to be a specific design to suit you because you're entering a space that's male dominated. So there's certain things you need to do that's not the norm, right? To
Yeah.
essentially, make space for yourself, or claim a seat at the table, should we say?
Mhm.
How do you think, or how has being a woman influenced your work? How is it, or do you think your lived experience as a woman of color, shows up in your work, in the work that you do?
The way it shows up in my work is because I am not only my degrees and my resume, but I'm also my experiences
Yes.
and my origins and all of those things combined, and that gives me perspective. It sort of gives me that mindset of inclusivity across different cultures, origins, you know, race, gender, basically hearing every voice and making voices heard. So, as a leader, right, if I'm in the room and at a discussion table, I make it a point to ensure that every voice is heard by actually prompting some of the silent voices or trying to interject where I just hear an imbalance in the discussion. And also just like I devise my ways to gain views and opinions, sorry, convey my views and opinions in different ways through different mechanisms. I also use different mechanisms to take input as a leader from people who might not be as vocal during discussions and things like that, through one-on-ones, through email or other ways to communicate with them. So I think the thing is about inclusion and making sure that diversity of thought, ideas coming from all people and sources is part of the systems that we are building.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so diversity of thought, of experience, it's what we should essentially embed into these systems.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What do you wish more leaders should pause to consider when building or influencing systems?
I think certainly leaders should uh, leaders should consider being inclusive. I think, and psychological safety is very important to really encourage inclusivity. Right, it goes hand in hand. I think yes, those are the two key things: keeping an open mind, yourself, being authentic, approachable, and just modeling some of these behaviors yourself, being at that table, right? Uh,
Yeah.
that just is highly effective and helps build a culture where we'll build systems that last.
I think that's interesting. Building systems that last. Um, you're in a director position, and you have the power to shape systems. And when you look at I guess, what risk do you see that perhaps maybe other people are missing?
With AI, there's a lot of focus today on AI ethics, governance, and things, and a lot of the times when we talk about that, people are looking at legal things and some regulations and stuff like that, and how to comply with that, security. But I think we should not limit ourselves to that. How I think about this is that I don't treat AI ethics as a separate AI conversation. So, and I'm building a platform of my, right, as of now also.
Yes.
So, I treat it as a design and ownership uh, problem, right? And I think responsible AI comes from clarity on who owns decisions,
Yeah.
where humans stay in the loop, right? And how we detect unintended outcomes early. And in my view, these are architecture and leadership questions, not policy documents. So, when responsibility is designed into the system, ethics can become operational, not theoretical. So, yeah, that's my thing that people are like really missing,
Yeah.
that they need to really focus on the design and ownership of the system as they start evolving AI and integrating with AI in their enterprise solutions.
Yeah. I guess a lot of people do, AI policy, responsible AI, ethics should all those should be designed with the system from the very beginning. It's not
Yeah.
something you just slap on it at the end of it. Like it's not
Yeah.
like a sticker you just put on it at the end of the at the end.
Yeah.
Once you're done building, you just put a sticker that says responsible AI. No, it's something that should be thought about from the very beginning, from the very early stage, from
Yeah.
from data collection to from literally from the get go. It's something that everybody should be thinking about. I love that. What excites you right now about the work you're doing? Or what's the most exciting thing you're working on right now? No, maybe I know you can't talk about the stealth, that business you're building, platform you're building, but with what you're doing with New Broad, what excites you right now? What's exciting for you? Tell us.
So I've spent most of my career building platforms that operate at scale, right, at larger companies. And what AI is amplifying in all of those systems is something that we already struggle with, like ambiguity, speed, blast radius. So what really excites me is this question, like how do we design systems that behave well
Yeah.
even when humans aren't watching every decision,
Ooh.
right? And that starts much earlier than model selection or ethics review. It
Yeah.
starts with intent. We just discussed that, touched on that a little bit earlier, right? For example, should this decision be automated at all? What happens when it goes wrong? And who is accountable in that moment? I think the third one is a very, very important question, especially I would say that in today's world, right? So it's becoming even more relevant because for autonomous AI agents, for example, who is accountable,
Yes.
right? So that has to be defined. That 2 a.m. call is going to go to whom, right?
Yeah.
So I think those, so as I look back, some of the larger problems stay the same and they are even more amplified and important as we introduce AI in the stack. So currently, for example, the digital trust platform that I'm building, I've few at least to start with in the MVP we have like 4 agents, and we are really making sure that observability, explainability, and some of the guardrails like PII reduction, all of those kinds of things are built in from the get-go in the design, so that we sort of have the accountability built in from the beginning, right? And in order to help with the accountability, we need to have the system set up where people who are accountable can actually function when needed properly and help, like let's say if a system is down, bring it back again very quickly.
That's interesting. I think it's actually quite interesting because last week, as a community manager, my team, with the other community managers, we're thinking about how could we automate some of the things we do? Where can we plug AI into our work?
Yeah.
And we ran a session where we basically talked about, okay, first of all, before we can say this is what we want to use AI for, we first need to recognize why, right? You can't just be like, yeah, let's automate. Okay, but why?
Yeah.
And then let's understand the why. And then once we understand the why, let's also understand what are the things we do that we should not automate. What are the things that we do that we should keep human? Was one
Yeah.
of the conversations we're having. Because the truth is, yes, AI is amazing, it's incredible, it's shiny, it's helping us, we can go into ChatGPT or Claude, ask it a question, and we have a bunch of, answers immediately. But not everything needs AI.
Yeah.
Not everything needs AI.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say you mentioned 2 of the 5 very practical questions, right? So the first one being, should this decision be automated at all? And the second
Yeah.
one being, where does human judgment stay in the loop, right? So you
Yeah.
mentioned two of them. I would add three more, right? What is the blast radius if the automated decision is wrong, right? And
Yeah.
that's the third one, right? And then the fourth, can we explain and audit the decisions after the fact? That's the fourth one. And fifth, who wakes up when the system fails? And that's something you'll hear from me a few times here, being an engineering leader, because I've been through such situations.
Yeah, I think those are definitely very important questions. I think the important questions that we need to consider, particularly if we're integrating AI into things that are affecting people's lives, right? If you decided you want to automate a form of medical diagnosis, then yeah, you need to explain to us how has the system come to this conclusion.
Yeah.
Who when some if and when something goes wrong, who's responsible for it?
Yes.
Who's the I don't want to say who takes the fall for it, but who comes up and say, okay, we messed up. This is what happened.
Yeah.
And I think these are conversations we're going to be having more of. I think more people are also conscious of the environmental impact of AI. What does it mean? What does responsible AI mean? I think it's a conversation we're having a lot more lately, and I'm very happy about that because I think those are the conversations we need to be having.
Yeah.
Truth be told,
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched upon a very important aspect. So, I mean, it's like I just mentioned about responsible AI and how it should be designed into the system and things like that. But, looking at the larger picture, at the macroeconomics of AI, with AI infrastructure, how it's affecting our data centers,
yes,
our all interconnectivity across the whole globe, right? And how much power it's consuming, how much space is required, how much compute memory, and all of that coming together. There's a huge power and infrastructure requirement, which this huge surge of AI is putting over, and
yes,
hence it's so important and incumbent on everybody involved in the entirety of the AI stack, whether they are at the infrastructure level, whether they are at the data center level, whether they are at the building the core platform and cloud level, and whether they are at the enterprise software level and agentic system level, right? Entirety of the stack, the idea of sustainability has to be built in. So, like,
yes.
are we using the infrastructure and our resources in this for the systems that we are building responsibly? So, I think thanks for bringing that up. That's a real good point, and something, again, working at Equinix for several years is close to my thought process.
No, I love it. I love anything because I'm currently trying to finish a master's in AI, and the part that interests me about talking about AI is the sustainability aspect of things. Let's talk about the
Yeah,
ethics. Let's talk about, do we really need to use do you really need to use ChatGPT to send that email?
yeah,
Probably not.
true, true, true.
Right? And are we actually I think a debate that I'm seeing or conversation I'm seeing pop up recently is, a lot of people are asking, is AI going to take over our jobs, right? Is AI going to, render us useless? Are we going to be out of a job because of AI? And I think the conversation I'm seeing recently is because of Gen AI, a lot of people are now starting to lack a form of critical thinking, right? So the next wave in the future of work is that now a lot of applicants need to then show that they are able to think, they're critical thinkers. That's the next step for us in the future of work. But anyway, I digress. I digress. We've talked about, the incredible your journey into tech, which I think is absolutely fascinating. When we had our our initial call, you talked about, taking the exam and being like one of the first girls to do the exams. I think I remember you mentioned. And
Yep.
that's a story that I found so interesting. And I just remembered it now. Could you tell us a bit about that story? Could you talk us through the story, how it happened, you discovering it, and then taking the exam and being one of the few girls to take it?
Yeah, I think I touched upon it a little bit in my when we discussed about my early origins, career and journey. So yeah, I mean, I belong to a small town, Jhansi, where at least me, I lacked the awareness of engineering entrance exams and things like that, and so I found that out through other guys I was studying with. They were taking it, and they were open minded enough. They asked me, "Hey, why don't you take it? You excel at math, and you are a top student in the school." So I think I went back home. I sort of discussed that with my father, who was a math professor, and I think again, like I said, the mental models were to sort of, hey, does this career belong to a girl, right? And I think we had that discussion, and then I proceeded to taking the exams. Once I took the exam and stuff like that, I got a lot of support. Not only support, but then when I got through them, being the first girl who actually got selected into engineering from my small town, it was a matter of pride for my family. So there was a lot of firsts involved here. Not only the first engineer from my family, but from my girl from getting selected from my town, right? Um, and I would say that the pride was not just limited to my family, but to the people who I interacted and lived with in my community, and the broader set of folks that I knew. So I got a lot of support, pride, and the journey was a bit difficult in the sense that, again, and I got used to um, um, navigating male dominated spaces early on, because I was just one of the two girls in my college, and out of and I mean, there were a lot of um, things that I had to overcome,
Mm,
because systems were not made up which are very conducive to the girls. Like there wasn't a girls' hostel, for example, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I had to make do in some apartment, because not enough girls to warrant a girls' hostel. So yeah, it was an interesting journey, and I look that back as a lot of learning, a lot of growth, and that has really helped me evolve as a person, as a mother, as a leader.
That's amazing. So we've talked about how made your way into tech, your journey, how you started. We've talked about, leadership. We've talked about, the incredible work that you do building systems, responsible systems, building sustainable, responsible systems that work. But you can't pour for an empty cup. You you have to be, I guess, in the right state of mind to do what you do. How do you protect yourself? How do you protect your own energy? How do you incorporate wellness into your day to day? How do you incorporate wellness into your life?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Specifically, given the kind of pivots, and I would say I've gone through and seen in technology in my career, and as I've navigated my career and professionally over the past decade, more than a decade, right? So I think to find balance is, I would say that work life balance is something that is um, not there. I don't know saying that saying that is controversial or not, but that's how I have felt it, and just being accepting of the fact
Mm.
that it won't be there, right?
Wow.
So
Mm.
it's basically periods of time, right? It's like um, periods of time where one or the other will take
Mm.
priority, right? So it's basically, I would say that my career and my family, my and also parenthood has made me ruthless about priorities
I love
and a
that.
little bit gentler about everything else. Right? So I think that's how I have navigated, because I think once you know, a lot of my life has been about parenthood, right?
Mm.
And as well, alongside my career. So that has really fundamentally changed my relationship with time. I think time is the most essential commodity that we all have,
100%.
and has shaped how I lead,
Mm.
right? And I think before parenthood, I used to equate urgency with impact, right? Like, oh, if there's
Mm.
something coming up, I make it urgent, and if I do it very quickly, it will have impact.
Mm.
And I was willing to stretch endlessly, right? No work-life balance, because the work always felt very important, right?
Mm.
And but I think at some point of time I got a reckoning,
Mm.
as my responsibilities at home increased and I had to find space to find some balance, some
Mm.
ways to regain balance. Think, and and I would say that the my ambition had to be refined a little bit. It
Mm.
that didn't have to change, but just to be refined. And because is, I would say, time like is more finite. So
Mm.
every meeting, every decision, every escalation, we know has a real cost.
Yes.
So I think I the way what helped me is to stop measuring the commitment of myself and my team by number of hours spent,
Mm.
or how quickly somebody is available or available all the time, right? And started measuring it by the clarity and the outcomes that we all were driving towards. So that shift was a little bit uncomfortable at first, right?
Mm.
Because we sometimes look at work as being always available, and that tilts all the balance towards that. But but I think really realizing that focusing on outcomes is what really matters,
Mm.
rather than being available and present all the time.
Mm.
That really helped mentally,
Mm.
uh, finding that rhythm. And somehow I think that has helped me how I lead as well.
Mm. I like that. Prioritizing. Figuring out, first of all, you have to figure out how do I prioritize, right?
Yeah,
Because sometimes I feel like, oh, but everything is important, but this part is important, but that's important, but then it's then figuring out how do I then prioritize what's important in this moment, you
yeah,
know, what can I focus on right now, and what can I focus on later.
yeah,
So I guess using spend prioritization helps.
yeah. It does help, and I think, like I said, um, that helped me, specifically just understanding that time is finite and there is no way getting around priorities. So not treating everything in your life, whether work or family or personal, as competing priorities, but just as something that are different times in your life, right? And so something will be higher priority than the other
Yeah.
at a given point in time, and you just have to recognize that, and be happy and have peace in yourself that other things are little lower priority right now. So sometimes it is work, sometimes it is family. Depends on the need of the hour, and sometimes you have to prioritize every day for things, but and then sometimes you have to step back and prioritize over longer term, um, for certain larger things that you're thinking about, like, hey, I have to really travel to take care of a sick family member over the next 6 months, for example, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, thank you. I guess then how do you spark joy, or what do you do to spark joy?
If you are doing the things day to day that you love, that naturally brings joy. And sometimes that's always not possible.
Yeah.
I find a lot of joy in people, interacting with people, listening to them, and listening to their stories, and having just fun time with them, doing things with them. That's one. The other ways to spark joy is more scientific. Like there are certain hormones that naturally make us more active, joyful, help us help us be happy. A lot of them, they get triggered through exercise, like
Yes.
going for outdoor walks, hiking. Um, I think that really helps. Nature helps a lot to spark joy, and it also helps to reset, and give that mental space for you to step back. When you step back into what you were doing, which that helps, that creates some perspective and maybe answers some questions for which you didn't know. So many times I've found, if I'm trying to solve a scientific problem, or trying to design a system, or fix a problem, if I step back and take a break, go for a walk, have a nice conversation with a friend or a coffee, which sort of triggers those hormones, that
Yes.
really helps to
Yeah.
solve for some of the problems.
Yeah. Tea helps. I find
It
just
helps.
a
Yes.
nice cup of tea. A nice cup of tea always sparks joy for me.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. These days, I'm a big fan of chamomile tea, so that's
Yeah, chamomile is nice. Yes, yes. Okay, so we're nearing the end of our conversation, and I guess what I would like to know is, you spent years, mastering your career, or developing yourself in your career, and I know you've learned so much and you've discovered so much along the way, but what's one thing that, whether in your career or in your personal life or just in life generally, what's that one question you're still trying to answer, that you haven't found the answer to it, you're still trying to figure it out? What's that one thing?
a lot is going on around us, around AI today, right? And so I would say leader, and I've been thinking about AI at the intersection of leadership, with all my experience and where I'm coming from. So leadership in AI isn't about control, I would say. It's about stewardship. Stewardship basically being responsible for building things, systems that will be responsible and will last long and beyond us, right? So I think, and how to do that, yes, that's a question I don't know,
Oh, the
right?
answer
We
to.
all we all trying to find out, and we'll be on this journey together,
Yeah,
we'll
we're
we'll
trying.
probably exchange notes.
We're all on this journey together. We're all trying to figure it out together. No, that's amazing. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I think to round up, my final question for you is, what's one thing, what's one thing you want a listener to walk away feeling? So someone's listening to this, and what's that one thing you want them to, leave with? Or what's one question you want them to think of by the end of this by the end of this episode? What's that one thing?
Yeah. So I think I'll start with a question, because this is something that I have personified. So I would have people ask themselves that, and I'm talking to a technology audience. I'm
Yes.
talking about people building software systems, architecting, designing solutions, right? So if a system works only because one person is holding it together, if the answer is yes, it's not resilient.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that happen more often than not, right? Like, oh, there is a problem. Let's go and talk to this person. Let's go talk to this person. So it's very important to build systems that do not just work because one person is holding it together. Right? That's very important. So as a leader, my goal is to always think about what we leave behind is less about what we have built, right? But and more about what continues to work.
Legacy. So we start to think about the things we're working on as something, as a legacy, as something we leave behind. That's
Yeah,
something
yeah,
that even without us, it still stands.
yeah, yeah,
So I guess people can start thinking, what kind of legacy am I building?
yeah. Yeah, and it definitely applies to the AI systems that we are
Of
building
course.
together, because legacy becomes really real here. Because AI systems, the way it is going, they are going to really outlast their creators.
Yeah.
All these LLMs, that public LLMs, other technology that is coming up, it's going to outlast their creators, and this is very, very powerful technology, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's getting
Yeah.
built, and these technologies and the systems will make decisions with speed and scale. So if we don't design them thoughtfully, if we are leaving behind systems that can amplify the harm in
Yes.
trust. And so for me, legacy in the AI era means really stewardship, building systems that are observable, accountable, and designed with clear boundaries. They don't need to be perfect,
Yes.
but responsible.
I love that. Designed
Yeah,
with clear boundaries. It doesn't need to be perfect, but it does have to be responsible. That's
yeah,
amazing. That's perfect. I think this is honestly the best way to just end this episode. It's, building things that aren't perfect, but they are responsible and they have clear boundaries. I love that. Thank you so much, Dipti, for taking the time to, talk and share your story and just share your insights and your experience. Where's the best place people can, connect with you?
yeah. The best place to find me is LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, and then my website, company site, are other places. My contact info is on LinkedIn with emails and phone number.
Thank you. We'll add all that information, the links and
And
stuff to the show notes.
yeah, and I'm happy to, have people reach out for brainstorming, just discussion, and whatever it is. I'm happy to meet with people, and of course, discuss all of these topics.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for listening. And this is her coded story. And speak to you soon. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.